Hi, my name is Sha'uri and I'm doing a presentation for my world literature class since 1650. So this presentation, I'm going to be doing it over Rosario Castellanos, who's a Latina American poet. She was born in 1925 in Mexico City, and she grew up on the Guatemalan border, specifically on coffee plantations, which occupied her family's land. And even though she lived a lavish lifestyle with her family, she was subject to a lot of mental and emotional abuse by her own parents. She recalls in some of her interviews the time when her brother passed away. And in these interviews, she recalls how a relative had apparently had a vision that one of either her or her brother would die. And she remembers overhearing her mother claiming, please don't let it be the boy, let it be the girl instead. And when her brother did in fact die, she was subject to a lot of emotional abuse, and she was overcome with this guilt that she was the one who was supposed to die and not her brother, because she recalls her mother exclaiming, crying out, why couldn't the girl die? Why did the brother have to die? And so she was just consumed with a lot of guilt in her childhood. And throughout her lifetime, she is inspired to write novels and poems by the people that she meets, and even death, which she encounters a lot in her lifetime, in her adolescence and in her adulthood. And even though she loved to write poetry, she loved to write novels, she couldn't quite live off of it. It wasn't a profession that could be accepted, that could hold her, that could sustain her. But when suddenly her parents passed away and leaving her an orphan, she was able to commit her life to writing. In that same year, the same year of her parents' death, she was able to publish 2 whole books. But they were on the subject of mortality and a lot of loneliness, which I'm sure she experienced a whole lot of. Specifically, one poem in particular she wrote called Daybreak, it depicted a really grim picture of death and what could possibly come after, which I'm sure she contemplated a lot. I'm sure she contemplated a lot of her own death, a lot of her own mortality. And so she, like I said, she experienced a lot of death herself. She's come across it, and she's come across a lot of solace, having lost the majority of her family in her lifetime. But she was able to use her pain to create a number of masterpieces. A friend of hers, a friend named Oscar Boniface, he remembers a recurring pattern in her poems in which he associates lamps with death. In a lot of her poems, lamps are centered as kind of, being in kind of a relation with death. And ironically enough, as if her own poetry was foreshadowing her demise, Rosario was electrocuted in an attempt to turn on her lamp, and she died on the way to the hospital in the ambulance. But due to her deathly reputation, due to her morbidity, and people speculated that she probably just committed suicide. But those close to her friends and colleagues, they knew better. They knew that she wouldn't purposely electrocute herself. And despite her reputation as a grim type person, she is also remembered by her contribution to the liberation movement against sexual inequality in Mexico. In her short life, she was a voice for Mexican women who were constantly silenced, constantly rejected, and ignored. And she often critiqued male male writings, and she always sought to disrupt and wrinkle the fabric of machismo and propagandism. So I always, reading about her, I realize, why isn't she more renowned for her work, for her contribution to feminism? Now in this day and age, feminism is actually looked upon. It's actually like, I don't know how you would say it, but I'm sure if more people knew about Rosario Castellanos, she would be a figure to look up to. So I really enjoyed reading about Rosario. I really enjoyed reading and researching about her and her poems. And I just feel really sorry for her in her lifetime, because she came face to face with a lot of death, with a lot of sadness, and a lot of depression. But using that, she was able to create some of the best works of some of her best works in her life. So yeah, that's my presentation. Thank you.